Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reserve Seating. We are in week two of our month-long celebration of actor Joe Mantegna, entitled Joe Mantegna because we're so clever.
You're
We're
welcome.
clever like David Mamet clever. So we're joined by two of our favorite people, John and Jan. And before we go into our review of today's movie, Homicide, which is Mantegna's third collaboration on film with writer-director David Mamet after House of Games and Things Change, I wanted to start with John and Jan. What are your impressions of Joe Mantegna, just kind of as an actor and his place, kind of in his work with David Mamet or outside of his work with David Mamet? Are you fans of his? What do you think?
I'm a big Mantegna fan. I think he's terrific. I think he and Mamet have some sort of subconscious what like relationship that he knows just how to write to for Mantegna, and
Mhm.
Mantegna knows just how to deliver Mamet. I've seen him in other things too. I think he always brings it. He's terrific. I love him.
Mhm.
He's a national treasure. I think people tend to pigeonhole him, but he actually has quite a range when you consider that he's done straight drama and certainly very heavy drama like Homicide. And he's also the voice of Fat Tony on The Simpsons, which is delightful. He's also the source of one of my favorite quotes of all time. At the time that he appeared in The Godfather Part 3, he said in an interview, "Remember, The Godfather is the Italian Star Wars." No one handles Mamet dialogue better
Yeah.
than Mantegna. He's the king. And that makes me wish, as wonderful as Al Pacino is in Glengarry Glen Ross, I wish they had given it to Mantegna, who played the part on Broadway,
Mm.
because I would like to see Joe Mantegna's Ricky Roma.
That might be my favorite Mamet movie. What do you all have a favorite Mamet movie?
I'd say either Glengarry Glen Ross or House of Games. Next spring, they're doing another revival of Glengarry Glen Ross on Broadway, and they've announced half the cast. Um, Bob Odenkirk is going to be Shelley the Machine Levine. Michael McKean is going to be the Alan Arkin character.
Okay.
Kieran Culkin is going to be Ricky Roma.
Interesting.
And every time they announce another cast member, it makes you want to line up and buy tickets for that.
Yeah.
Um,
What if we just staged a performance of Glengarry Glen Ross? Just all of
Let's
us
do
in the
it.
at this movie
we
crew. We
should
all
do, we
genders,
should,
genders. We're just
we
all
should really suggest this to Patrick.
yes,
A Patreon only
yes.
table, a
Like a
table
table
Sure.
read.
read of Glengarry Glen Ross with all of us.
I'm volunteering all of us to do it right now.
Let's do it.
I
I
like
know
that
who I'd want to
idea.
be. I want to be the office manager so I can say the line, because I don't like you.
I just don't want to be cast by somebody as Shelley Levine because that's the character in all of literature or filmmaking or playwriting that makes me want to run through a window. More,
What's the name of the character that Alec Baldwin plays? That should be me.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Second prize, third prize, you're fired.
So Homicide is this was a first time watch for me. Was it a movie that any of you had seen before?
I saw it in its original theatrical run way back when, and then
Mhm.
had not seen it again.
Yeah. So what were your impressions this time around? Did you like it more than you did back in 91, or was it the same movie that you remember it being?
I liked it a lot more than I did in 91. Although I think this harkens back to too serious David Mamet. As he continues to make films, they loosen up a little bit and they
Mhm.
develop a sense of humor. You would be hard pressed to find anything in this film that would be considered a respite. It's
Yeah.
pretty grueling from beginning to end. But at the time, I thought it was a really impressive piece of work. My only quibble is I wish the title weren't quite so generic.
Yeah, I wonder if it got overshadowed a bit by like the television series because that became sort of the canonical. Homicide, and this movie sort of fell under the radar a bit.
And certainly his other films and plays have much more memorable, interesting, unique titles. I mean, Sexual Perversity in Chicago, come on.
I thought that this movie was the right movie at the right time for me to watch last week on Wednesday after world events that transpired. Because I don't know about all of you, and I want to get your take on this. When I'm feeling bad, I want to wallow in another movie or world of bad as opposed to being tried to cheer up. Like, I don't need a comfort movie. I need to feel somebody else's pain that's just as magnified but different.
But then that is your comfort movie.
I
And
could,
that's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Everybody has different comfort movies. And I'm really
Adam
glad
wants
you said
macaroni
that.
and cheese with shards of glass in it.
I'm really glad you said that, Adam, because I was seeing a lot of resonance with current situations in this country,
Mhm.
just between some of the politics in the movie, even that feeling of what do you do when you feel like an outsider? And what do you do when you're presented with an opportunity to join a movement? And how that can overshadow and and make you question your decisions and your morals.
You know, you feel like you're an outsider, whether it be like in Joe Mantegna's case as a police officer, he's kind of, it's funny too, because like he's presented almost as like an alpha of his peer group at the beginning, but then you learn later that he's very much not that. Yeah, like because he's identifying with his Jewish roots, but it's almost like, yeah, too little, too late. It's like there's
Yeah.
you're never gonna be part of this, even though there's that great scene where he's at the library and then the guy says like you're Jewish and you can't read Hebrew. Like what good are you? And
Several times during the film, other characters comment.
yeah,
Do you hate
I'm
yourself
thinking
that much?
Do you hate
Rebecca
yourself?
Pigeon,
Who
Mm.
are you
Are
even?
you
have you no shame?
right?
yeah. It's like whatever bona fides he's trying to build up or like reclamation of his faith or his finding his tribe. It's just like, no, there's political machinations within that where just because you're Jewish doesn't mean like you're in the club. And it's really interesting.
And there's such an inauthenticity to his relationship with the police where he really does snap. At first, when you're watching, this is my first time watch, but I'm watching and he's being racist, he's being bigoted, he's saying all these terrible things. And then over the course of the film, as we see his personality develop through his association with the Jewish group, you start to see more shades of him. And then when he returns to the cop persona at the end, you start to see that come back and you realize like it's so performative. It's so like, again, as we've alluded to, sort of this manifestation of that self-hatred and that frustration
Yeah.
that you feel like he belongs. So it's really just the way it's sort of layered in and you get to really, it hits you really hard at first and it's kind of off-putting. And I was kind of in the same situation watching the movie this week and thinking like, ooh, man, we're going to have to talk about like some of the stuff in this. And then it's like, oh, I get it. I see what it's doing here. So that puts it in like so much more of a stark contrast there. It's really interesting.
Were any of you kind of confused by the final moments of the movie? Because I don't know if it was just a first time viewing thing, but I was a little bit, I don't know, and I don't know if it's a just me still processing the movie or if it was just kind of weak plotting or not clear enough at the end. But it's like, how much is he being manipulated and how much of it is just irony and how much of it is yeah, like the evidence that he finds in the basement, is it planted or is it just like saying this is a whole other world that like the police just aren't can't even don't
Right.
even know how to scratch the surface of. So I found it interesting, but also sort of like I don't really know what to make of it.
I thought that this is one place where the film falters and that I don't think Mamet sticks the landing for two reasons.
Mhm.
Number one, I have to think that the gentleman who's trotted through the scene is the gentleman who earlier killed his family
Right.
and promised to show Bobby Gold the nature of evil.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that character has shown Bobby Gold the nature of evil, and him being trotted out at the end seems a naked attempt to tie up loose ends. But also, I think Mamet didn't want to hit us over the head and make it too specific, because clearly at the end, Bobby Gold has suffered because he had a choice between two things and he refused to make a choice.
Mhm.
Clearly, Mamet is suggesting you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. You have to pick a side. I have to think that his demotion at the end is because of what they found in his pocket when they took him to the hospital. But
We
that's
never
never
see
made
that.
specific.
Yeah,
Yeah, I never even thought of that. Yeah.
That
but it could be.
the police, I feel, has found out that he bombed the train store. And it's almost as if, because so much of his identity is based on being a homicide detective, it is the title of the film, that the demotion effectively means he's not a cop anymore
Mhm.
in his own mind. So he winds up not a cop and not a Jew. And what benefit a man if he gains the world and loses his soul? It's very Shakespearean.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I also wasn't sure, again, that ambiguity you spoke to before. Like, I wasn't sure because I was reading it. I guess I read it a little differently at the end. I was thinking of it as the demotion coming from, and this may have been me missing plot points, but when the kids walk through and explain that they're the ones who did it just because they wanted the fortune, and then the man walks by. I was thinking like banality of evil, like when he says like I'll show you the nature of evil, and it's this guy just kind of walks by silently. And my like David Lynch brain was like, oh, okay, so it's kind of like he's saying like, look how simple this was. It was just kids. It wasn't this conspiracy. It wasn't this huge thing. It was actually just greed, or whatever you want to call it, avarice or whatever.
Like it's sort of like the Mystic River ending a little bit
Yeah,
too,
kind
where
of.
you just they have this big monologue between William H. Macy and Joe Mantegna at the beginning of the movie about like good cop work and how like the FBI are simps and like the cops are the real people who are crime busters and everything like that. But what it sort of is showing is like they make the Ving Rhames case, or later Joe Mantegna makes the case of the Jewish woman who gets shot, into these like to borrow John's phrase, like Shakespearean types of cases. Whereas if they just did what they said that they were going to do, which is just like grunt cop work, they
Right.
would have found out that these kids did it.
That's
Like,
the other thing I was thinking was like he took it on another direction, and then
yeah,
was sort
it's
of
like hubris, or like they just think that they're like, the Michael Jordans of the cop world when
right.
really
Yeah,
they're just like fucking Trent Tucker. Yeah.
But Mamet does complicate things by
Yeah.
revealing that there is this underground pro-Jewish
right.
organization
Yeah.
that a lot of people have no knowledge of. So it's not as if Mantegna made that up. I think he's going for irony at the end when it
Yeah.
turns out that even though Mantegna uncovered this thing, it was the simplest solution. It was a rumor in the neighborhood that she had treasure in the basement, and that's what they were after.
Oh, there's spoilers in this review,
Yeah,
everybody.
sorry, we spoiled the ending.
I love that coalescence at the end though of the family murderer, the kids confessing, the truth about the old woman, all of that sort of his demotion, all of that comes together. And you could argue that is revealed as the banality of evil, is that it's everywhere, it's everyone, and that what really pulls Bobby in is that evil because he refuses to commit. I mean, say what you want about that dad. He killed his family, which is the most horrible thing you can do. But he said he did it to protect them, right? He said he did it to protect them. At least he committed. I think that's not held up as a good thing, but it's shown as, at least we know what to do with him.
Right.
Now, what do we do with Joe Mantegna, right? He didn't commit enough to help the old woman. He didn't commit enough to help the Jewish cause. He didn't commit enough to help Tim. He didn't to that friendship, and he didn't commit enough to help save the Ving Rhames character. His waffling and non-committal caused all that evil.
And as Jan and I were discussing after we watched the film, and this is where the carpentry of the screenplay sort of becomes evident. The cops have no family. There is no family life shown at all. It's all the job. and the Jewish group, it's all family. And so these come together in the figure of the family murderer, that gentleman, because that's where family and crime intersect in the film. That's sort of the one character that's making the other two pieces join together. It's a little prosaic.
I will just say about Homicide that I think Mantegna with Mamet is just always really satisfying to me. Throw Ricky Jay in and you can't lose. And I love how layered Mamet can be in his writing while still being a little bit ambivalent, like we said at the end, because it lets you bring so much of your own thoughts to the movie, and that Mantegna plays it just so well. You know, you can see what's going on with Bobby, and yet you can also see his pain and frustration and confusion.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it, even though I don't like it as much as House of Games or Glengarry Glen Ross, but those are high bars to clear.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's a worthwhile watch.
Oh
So
yeah,
we will be back next week for week 3 of Joe Mantegna with Liberty Heights, which is the final movie in Barry Levinson's Baltimore trilogy after Diner and Avalon. So more to come. Please join us. John and Jan, thank you for being here.
thank you for having
Anytime.
us. Great to see you guys.
Great seeing you. And until next time.
If your mom claims that she's gonna, no, it doesn't work.
What's Mama
That was
Claire?
hers. I've
Maybe
got
if you think there's treasure underneath the candy
Yeah,
store,
there you go.
that doesn't mean you should kill the old lady.